Welcome back to the table. Today, Ryan and I just played Sankore. This is the newest one from Osprey Games and the designer of Merv. However, this is a much heavier game than Merv.
Yeah, it's heavy as far as heavy games go. Honestly, I think that this is definitely on that side of the spectrum.
For sure.
If you're a fan of heavy games, you definitely want to be paying attention to this. But, you know, if you're more on the lighter side, this one might prove to be a little heavy. I just want to get that out of the way before we jump into the video.
Yeah, when we do these Just Plays, we usually talk about who it's for, who it's not for. Obviously, this is for heavy gamers. If you play, card games and, shoots and ladders, this is not maybe for you. I'm not saying don't try it, but it's a heavy game.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of interconnected things that happen. But for me personally, I think, honestly, the theme really tied it all together.
It does.
The whole game takes place in Sankore, the University of Timbuktu. This was one of the first schools or universities in Africa, and we're playing as part of the same school. Of course, it's not cooperative in any way. We all want to do the best. We want to prove to be the best facilitators at the school, but you're kind of operating your own set of students, your own set of classrooms, while contributing to this board, which is divided into 4 different sections for the 4 different aspects of the college that they're teaching. There's a whole astronomy section, a whole religion section, mathematics, and law, which were kind of the 4 subjects that you're going to be teaching classes in. And these kind of function almost like little mini games where you're doing very different things and scoring in very different ways for each one of them. But they kind of tie together in such a way that you need to do some actions to kind of get the stuff that you need to do others. And there's a whole cycle that's actually printed on the board that kind of talks you through like the process of kind of how to make these things work together, but it's not necessarily an easy task to do that.
Yeah, that cycle that Ryan just pointed out, that is important. I would say, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're teaching this game, point this out. And some of the things that come up, some of the questions that come up with a lot of games, particularly heavy ones, is while you're playing, someone inevitably will go, where do I get this again? This helps you figure that out, and it talks about, kind of gives you a general sense of how these things tie together. You're going to get your books here. Here's a place where you can get some gold. Here's where you're going to get some skills to use to sort of better some of the actions you're going to be taking. And out here, you're going to be collecting salt, sort of converting gold to salt, among other things in all of these areas. But that is some of the general ways the resources are managed across those 4 areas.
Yeah, and you're going to have to definitely do a little bit of each thing because the game encourages you as... And I don't want to say that this is cooperative by any stretch at all.
It is not.
But there is almost a cooperative aspect of as you improve your school, it kind of improves the whole university. And this is kind of an interesting mechanic, and I think something that I really enjoyed. You see here right in the middle of the board, there are these different tracks. And this is where there's going to be students. At the start of the game, these are full of students. And as you play, you're recruiting students from these different studies into your school. And as you do, these numbers get higher. That lets you take the action associated with that particular discipline at a better value. So as people enroll from a certain aspect, it gets better for everybody. As the school itself becomes more knowledgeable, people can start taking that action at a higher value. That's interesting because as other players take those actions, it kind of encourages you to maybe tail along and try to strike when the iron is hot, when those actions are the most valuable.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about enrolling students that brings the game over to the player board are the students are randomly put out on those tiles in the variety of colors that they can be. There's going to be 4 different colors, and when you take a student, it's going to go underneath one of the introductory classes before you get onto the advanced ones on your player board. So when you look out there and you see, I need an orange student, that's going to mostly dictate where you enroll from. But you've got to keep in mind, like Ryan said, you're going to thereby make that whole area a little easier for people to interact with. Because the more students that are taken, anyone can go there. Ryan could be doing astronomy all game. I haven't touched it. And then once I go there, I'm like, well, I'm taking big, strong powers now because of that.
Right. Some people were taking the action at +1, and you're taking the action now at +5.
Yeah.
But you also get a little bit better at the action yourself the more you take it. Each one of these little areas, like I said, functions like its own little mini game, but it's going to have you placing these wooden pieces on the board, which, by the way, the components for this game are phenomenal.
Yes, it is a very nice looking game.
But the astronomy has you kind of traveling across the Middle East, placing these little tents down as you go. And you'll notice as you place tents, your astronomy power gets stronger. So the more tents you have on the board, the higher you can take the action. You add together what's available here with what's available on your player board, add it together, and that's going to help you travel. In the religion area, you're putting mosques down in these different cities. On the madrasa here in the center, you're putting down walls around that madrasa. And then over here in the law area, you're kind of like mastering different subjects with these crowns. And all of these are going to help you do that action better. So you are kind of rewarded by leaning heavily into one, but you can't just do one. You have to plan ahead and kind of balance it out.
Yeah, you 100% have to do that, because while the law is very attractive at first, because you see all of these little powers that you can add to your player board to make all of your actions better. Everyone wants to do that at the beginning of the game, but you're going to be spending gold and various resources over there in law to get those things. What you don't get from law are more gold and resources. You get those from the other places. And one of the key resources are the books that you're going to collect all over the game, but mostly here, right here in the religion area. And the books are going to be spent to do a lot of things. Usually the higher grade actions in the other areas are going to require some books. If you want to graduate one of your students, which is another thing you can do, you're going to need to spend a book. If you want to acquire advanced classes to add to your board, you're going to have to spend a book. One of the cool things about spending these books is you're going to be placing them in the library here. There's this board that's double-sided. We actually played on the
beginner side,
basic side. I don't know that there's any beginner to this game at all, but we played on this side, and as you add the books, this has one of the more intricate things that I think is going to take some lighter gamers a minute to get their head around.
Yeah.
As you place books here, it's going to increase the value of prestige. Prestige is what you're gathering in this game to score points at the end of the game. There's prestige tokens all over the board. You're going to be able to get them as wooden tokens to store on your board. You're going to get them in some other ways too. But the value of those prestige tokens is dictated by sort of the area majority in each of these three shelves. Whatever color has the most, that color is going to get 2 points for each shelf. So if orange had the most on each of these three shelves, each orange prestige is going to be worth 6 points at the end of the game. So all the players are controlling that as well. So you're not only gathering prestige, but you're also doing things to sort of adjust the value of the prestige.
And there are a lot of different ways to get these prestige tokens. You'll see them all over the board, like David said. Each one of these different disciplines has different ways of earning prestige. There's a little area control thing that's happening on each of these boards that can earn you prestige. You're going to get prestige from going up high enough on your different tracks by doing these actions a lot. You're going to earn prestige tokens by graduating students, and the higher they go on the track, the higher they graduate, the more honors they get, the more prestige tokens you're going to get for doing that. You can earn some prestige tokens with a little area control mechanic in the madrasa. As you play the game, you're going to be loading these middle spaces with prestige tokens, and then you're placing walls to kind of collect them. So there are a lot of different ways to collect those prestige tokens, but there is an entire aspect of the game of watching what other players are doing, seeing what prestige tokens they're collecting, and trying to make those prestige tokens meaningless, because they can actually score 0 points. If you don't get your books out, the right color books out in this library like David was talking about, it's potential that some of these prestige tokens could be worth up to 5 points or even 6 points, and some could be worth 0. And so there's an entire balancing act of kind of looking around, seeing who's doing what, and either trying to thwart them or join them in hopes to beat them.
Exactly. There's definitely a ride their shirt tails aspect to that, because you can look and go, well, he's taking some orange prestige. There's a lot of orange books here. Well, there's plenty of orange prestige left. I'm going to go after some of that as well.
Yeah.
But it is one of those games where even sort of later in the game, if there's 4 players at the table, 3 players can have a significant impact on the 1 player at the table who might be dominating a color, and they could really change that up in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, now when we talk about games on Just Plays, we like to talk about who it's for, who it's not for. And I want to talk about something that kind of leads into who it's not for. Because like David just described, and there's another thing I want to talk about here, it's very easy to get very far behind in this game.
Yeah,
I think
you can.
There is a puzzle here with the classes that we haven't talked about, where as you're taking those class tiles and putting them into your little classrooms, you're moving these students and manipulating them and moving them in very specific ways to try to actually take these classes or have them attend these classes. This is a very key part of the game, and this is kind of a very efficiency puzzle here. And you can make some mistakes on this board where you end up with the inability to take classes that can really set you back. I mean, it's not as bad as like Food Chain Magnate, but you can definitely kind of put yourself in a rough position.
Yeah, and that player board, it bears a little further description. The player board is really cool. As you take these advanced classes, you're going to build that sort of little pyramid. And what Ryan was talking about is you actually work your way up through it. When you're placing a student, you have to place them at the bottom, and the next class they can take is the class that they're immediately under. And then you can get various different colored classes. You're going to want to try to match the colors of the students with those, but you're not going to be able to do that all of the time because some of the classes might require 2 students to be underneath them to take the really strong power. And those advanced classes, there's a variety of them. So you're kind of building your own little, I wouldn't call it an engine, but it is definitely sort of the
path.
The path.
The path to graduation.
Yeah, the path to graduation, or the path at least to 4th year, as it were, of the classes that you can go through. And it took me a minute. I recognized most of the way through the game that Ryan had kind of stationed some students at a lot of the classes so that he could just filter other students up through those, thereby giving them the option, if he wanted to take some of those classes that required 2 students to be there. There's certain high value actions in, I think, every single section that requires that to be the case. You're going to have to use some mismatched color students to make that happen eventually, but it is very important to the game.
Yeah, and there's a whole aspect of this game, not just with the efficiency, but with finding certain combos. We talked a little bit about these skill tiles that you get from the Lost section. You can get these skill tiles. They make your other actions better. You can definitely be in a situation, especially if you're playing with people who've played before and you're new, where you're watching other people go, I'm going to take this action. I'm going to get all these things. I'm going to put this on the board. That's going to trigger something else, and I'm going to be turning in cards. And they're just like having crazy turns where they're doing a bunch of stuff on the board, and you're going, I put down one guy, and I'm done.
Yeah.
That can very easily happen to you. So you have to kind of understand, like, it's probably going to take a play to really grasp how this all connects together and how you can really efficiently, use those skill tiles or value those skill tiles. There's a lot going on with like this favor track up here and when you take favor and how to take favor, weighing that versus taking prestige. So it's I just think there's a lot going on for your first game, and you kind of have to come into it with that perspective of like, it's going to take a teaching game. Like David said, maybe like halfway through the game, it's like, oh, now it's clicking and now I kind of see how you need to manipulate these things. I think that might be a turnoff for some people.
Oh, it absolutely could be a turnoff. I do think that varied skill levels at the table are going to potentially open this game up for some people to really not enjoy it when they're sitting there with people that are a higher skill level. At MVM, I am the lowest skill level when it comes to heavyweight games. So sitting here playing with, say, Jeremy, Ryan, and Emily, especially on my first play, I'm going to feel, just like I'm lost. They're getting it a lot sooner than I am. I'm like, okay. By the end of the game, I'm like, okay, I think I get it. I liked what this game was doing, so I want to, in this rare occasion, I want to get better at this game. I do want to try this game more, which I can't always say about heavy games. But it is, at its heart, one of those games where I wouldn't say it's simple to play, but it's like a lot of Lacerda heavy games where it's like, you've got these few actions, and those few actions are usually to advance your, what you've got going on your player board, your ability to take the bigger actions. Then there's one of those actions, which is to teach a class, which is when you take your students up to the next class. That's how you interact with the board and do a lot out here on the board. But it's got those two things. So when you teach this game and you say, here's the actions you can take, one of those actions kind of has a big explosion of an options that you can take out on the board.
For me, a person that likes heavy games, I found this game incredibly satisfying. I like that the different actions you're doing in each of these different 4 areas feel so different. And although you're kind of trying to do the same things, you're kind of trying to get area control. If you notice, each one of these areas is divided into 4 different sections, and it can feel like a very satisfying puzzle of like, how do I maintain area control or gain area control in one of these areas while also getting the resources I need or the skill tokens I need to get better at doing this action? And there's a whole lot of like waiting to see if other players are going to enroll students, because you'll notice there's a lot of icons printed on these student boards. Sometimes you're going to trigger area control scoring where you're going to take books. Sometimes you're going to trigger area control scoring where you're going to get prestige tokens. And so kind of watching for those moments, timing it can lead to some very satisfying turns where you feel like you just really pulled a fast one. Like you really set yourself up and triggered a scoring on the same turn and just collected everything. And that feels really good.
Yeah, and even when you can't collect everything, like Ryan said earlier, you're not going to be able to go really deep into each of these 4 areas. But if I've gone really heavy on religion but not on law, and I see that people are enrolling students to the point where the next student's going to trigger a scoring where the books are going to get divvied up, and Ryan's in 3 of the schools over here, but not the 4th.
Yeah.
I could take one action to get just one of my students in that 4th, which is going to let me, again, sort of shirt tail onto Ryan's progress and at least take the book from that 4th section. So I'm getting a little something out of it with minimal effort on my part.
Yeah, and I think that watching when those scorings is going to happen, watching how the books are being played out, watching what the prestige token situation is with other players, seeing which prestige tokens are even left available on the board. I like that puzzle. I like having to kind of constantly adjust your strategy. But if you notice, I kind of just went heavy on 2 things. I did law and astronomy. I didn't do any religion.
Nope.
And I did, which was tough. I made getting books a little hard for me.
You did some here.
I did some. I found other ways to get books. Like being able to do that and knowing that I'm going to come back to this game and play a very different game the next time I play it. And again, it's not like you're doing the same thing every single turn because each one of these actions feels so different. You got to think about it a little differently. I'm actually eager to kind of explore what this religion aspect does because I almost completely ignored it.
Yeah, I definitely want to explore it more. I do want to make one more point. It's kind of a double-edged sword for who it's not for sure. This is a game that also has limitations, and sometimes people can feel really constricted and like suffocating from that. Other people like that because it's super crunchy, and there's a few restrictions I want to mention. You're restricted to the number of resources you can have. There's salt and gold. You can have 6 gold and 4 salt. That's it. If you can't take any more than that. So you need to sort of like start doing your actions such that you're getting some in, you're spending them to do things, and so on and so forth. The other restriction, this is probably the more interesting one, is the prestige tokens themselves. Now, even though there are other ways to get prestige, these tokens that you're going to be collecting from the board go into part of your player board. That same part of the player board can be covered up by what they call favor tokens. You take favor tokens in order to use the favor track, which is a bunch of different bonuses depending on how far you are up on it. And you're going to be using that a lot. You're not playing this game without taking favors for sure.
Yeah.
The other way you can use it is to get rid of the favor token, but those tokens cover up those exact same spots for the prestige tokens, which is a really interesting dynamic. I think you could play a game, I mean, I didn't win, mind you, but I played a game where I filled my board up pretty high with those favors because those favors can be really great in a pinch to help make your turn what you need it to be.
Yeah, and I had an engine that actually helped me get rid of favor tokens as I took actions. That felt very satisfying. I think if I was going to sum it up, like that is my takeaway. Every single one of my turns felt very satisfying. It doesn't hurt that the game is so pretty to look at. The components are so nice. These wooden pieces are so nice. Everything just has a very clean look to it. And the graphic design really does help because there is a lot going on in this game, but the iconography is very easy to understand. And the fact that when you're taking a very specific action, you're just looking like if I'm doing law, I really only have to worry about this area. I don't have to keep referencing, a reference card or different things to figure out how to interact with this. Like you can kind of just look at that area as its own little mini game, like I've been saying, and really focus on that. I think that kind of helps you compartmentalize
for sure
what you're doing. You're not just looking at a sea of icons, you're looking at very specific sections.
You can definitely compartmentalize, but you also have to remember to make all those compartments work together. But that is our first experience playing Sankore. If you have any questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. At least Ryan will get down there and answer what he can. I'll get down there and try to answer whatever I can. Of course, until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.